goalies come a dime a dozen, but when the greats play, we get to see some of the best hockey. But even with all these great goalies, only one can win the Vezina each and every year. So in this video, that's exactly what I'm going to be talking about. We're going to be going through the 5 potential goalies that could be going and winning the Vezina, and we'll be going through their stats and comparing each of them to each other, and at the end we're going to wrap up with who I think will win the Vezina this year. But before we get into any of this, I have a question for you, and that's, who do you think deserves to win the Vezina? Is it, the number one guy out there? Is it a guy that lifts their team way above expectations, or is it the guy with the best stats? Who deserves to win the Vezina and why? But let's not waste any more time. Let's go ahead and get right into things and talk about the Vezina Trophy race. Now, there are a couple things that we need to touch on here and a couple disclaimers to explain how we're going to go about this. The first thing is, of course, the Vezina Trophy race means you have to play 25 games to be able to win that. The second thing here is the season isn't completely over yet. There's a little bit under a month left, but I wanted to cover this right now because if I wait any longer, then we're going to be talking about playoffs at that point, and I'm never going to even be able to cover it in the first place. And the last kind of thing here is the top 5 goalies. I wanted to erase any emotion out of it until the end when I pick who I think is going to win. The top 5 goalies are all based on odds of the current odds to win it. I just took the top 5 odd-based people, and we're going to compare those stats. So first, let's start with the honorable mention here. This one's not on odds. This is who I think this kind of deserves to be in the top 5, but I didn't know who deserved to be knocked out, and that's going to be Alexander Georgiev of the Colorado Avalanche with a .918 save percentage, a .256 goals against average. This ranks him top 10 in both statistics. Georgiev also has a 2-to-1 win-loss ratio and has had a great year, even with a Colorado team that was struggling for the beginning of the year. But the odds do not favor him the top 5, so he is a honorable mention. So let's get into the actual list here and start breaking it all down for you guys. First up here is going to be AndreVasilevskiy. Certainly a name that no one's surprised to be on this list. Vasilevskiy has been one of the best goalies in this league for almost a decade now, at least a half decade. He's been so good, and he's always in the Vezina talks to win this award. Now, with all that being said, his numbers, although still in the top 5, are not phenomenal, but well deserving to at least be in the conversation. With a .914 save percentage, which puts him at 11th, he keeps his team in a very solid position to win some of these games. And his team has the 7th best record in the league, and that definitely plays a part in this. But, of course, as we all know, just having the best goalie doesn't always mean you're going to win the most games, so that's not the whole story there. And we'll touch on that a little bit more as we go further on here. He also does see the 4th most shots, which is an important stat to look at, because the more shots you see, then you're going to have more goals go in, which is going to raise your goal against average. So that is an important stat to kind of compare. You need to punch those two at the same time, goals against average and shots faced, because you can face a lot of shots, and that's going to raise your thing. And that's why you got to look at that shots percentage along with that. So I kind of like pairing those two and then looking at your save percentage to compare all the way throughout. So 4th most shots against, and he has the 20th most shots faced per game, which is kind of an important stat because you got to average it out the rest of the way. He might see a lot of these shots, but it might be because he is playing in so many more games. So seeing the 20th most shots per game is going to show you the fact that once you compare it all to the rest, he's not seeing as many shots as it might appear at first sight. With all that, Vasilevskiy time and time comes up with some huge saves and helps his team to win very important games. And with the 8th best win percentage in the league from the goalie position, that is something that's definitely very important. But Vasilevskiy sits at 14th in goals against average, which does lower his overall stature. But of course, seeing so many shots is going to be an important factor in looking into this. So that is the first guy on this list. The next guy is going to be Jack Ottinger. of the Dallas Stars. Now, the Stars have been up and down for most of the year, but not due to Jack. Jack has had a great year for the most part, but maybe doesn't get you a whole bunch of wins, to say the least. Jack, out of all these guys, has a little bit of a confusing win-loss record, and I think that's the thing I want to touch on here first. Of course, win-loss record is not based all on the goalie, because you might stop a lot, but it might be because your offense can't score any points. That's a fair assumption here. But Jack, in 50 games, is 30, 10, and 10. So he gets you a lot of points, which is really, really important to get you a bunch of points. But his win percentages aren't the best. Now, if we take a look at some of his other stats here, he faces the 13th most shots per game. So he's seeing a very, very good chunk of shots come his way per game, and which is the most among these 5 goalies. Out of these 5 that we're going to have in this list, Jack is seeing the most shots per game, which is a really, really important stat, of course, because once again, that's going to raise his goals against average here. Now, once we look here, Ottinger has the 4th best save percentage, which is a very, very important stat of 919, and the 4th best in the entire league is incredible. He's making some big-time saves. He's making the simple saves. He's doing everything that you need to do, and he has the 13th in shots saved above expected. I like doing advanced stats and simple stats using places like StatMuse and a bunch of other locations to find some of these stats. So 13th in shots saved above expected. So however they do it, they break it all down, what should have been a goal or what shouldn't have been saved, I guess, in that regard. And they're saying that he's saving more than what at least the statistics would suggest he would be able to do. Now, he also ranks 6th in goals against average at a 2.44. And when facing all these shots, the most among all these guys, that's a really, really good stat. You have a really, really good save percentage. You're still just barely outside the top 5 in goals against average. All that, he honestly maybe should be a little bit higher in the odds because of all that. But like I said, I think his kind of win-loss area is where he gets pulled down a little bit. Some great stats, but of course with your win percentage, it's going to drag you down a little bit. They want all of it to kind of happen at the same time. Now, like I said, his case for the Vezina, maybe not expected at the start of the year. He wasn't really in the fold. I believe it was a contract year last year. No one really knew how much he was in the beginning, and he ends up coming back to the Stars and has an incredible year and takes a huge jump and definitely deserves to be in this conversation. But we still got 3 more guys to go through here. Now, the next guy, and actually the next 2, are going to be people that have a little bit more of a mid-team surrounding them. Jack, maybe not the best in win-loss respectives when it comes to, the 30, 10, and 10, but his points percentage is important, and all the rest of his numbers are really, really good. The next 2 here, the first guy we're going to cover here is going to be Connor Hellebuyck of the Winnipeg Jets. And, Hellebuyck has been a legend for the Jets team this year, and, the team itself hasn't helped him a whole bunch, to say the least. He faces the 13th most shots per game, which I think... Did I mess these stats up? Ooh, okay. Hold on, guys. I think I misread the wrong line. So Connor faces the 13th most shots per game, which is the most among these 5 goalies, not Jack. I put the lines right next to each other. That's on me. So Connor's the guy that faces the most shots. Scratch that from the Jack thing up there. He faces the most shots among these 5 goalies, and he is 12th in goals against average. So that's kind of where the things come into play. You're going to face more shots. You're going to allow more goals to go in net because of that. And that's why you want to lean on your save percentage after you kind of see those stats here. And he has the 5th best save percentage in the entire league. So he is saving a lot of shots, but he is still letting in plenty because how many he's facing. So you got to outweigh what's more important here. And I'd say the save percentage is obviously more important because although more goals are going in, it's not directly at his own fault. I mean, if you throw another 10 shots at any of these goalies, it's bound that another goal is going to go in at some point. So if you just do that and you match all these up, he might look a little bit better with the 5th best save percentage. Certainly worth, being in this race when you look at the save percentage alongside the other numbers there, because he's still just barely outside of the top 10 in goals against average, even with all that being said. He also has the 11th best win percentage on a Jets team that most people really didn't think were going to be too much in the race here, and they're sitting at 14th in the league with, I think, the number 1 seed in the wild card. Hellebuyck has done a great job this year, and if anything, being on a bad team with these stats almost raises your stocks, because the bad team overall is showing you, one, that they're not scoring a bunch of goals, at least consistently speaking, and your other goalies aren't doing a whole lot for you, but you're still putting up some great numbers. So you're kind of willing your team into a better spot here. So he's well deserving to be in this spot. And I think the fact that he's here, and I think that he might be able to, maybe not, I don't know the best way to say it, because this is a tough competition here, but I think he's kind of in a spot. I think number 1 is pretty obvious, and we'll get to that at the end here, but it's probably like 2A, 2B with how things are kind of laying out here. Now, the next guy, the second last guy here is going to be Ilya Sorokin. Now, hopefully I'm not butchering any of these names. I'm pretty terrible at it, but I think I did good, at least on the last name here. Now, Sorokin sits on the worst team amongst these 5 goalies, of course, with the New York Islanders. And by the way, don't confuse yourself. This is Ilya Sorokin of the Islanders. I think there's the Maple Leafs have another Ilya, and the last name looks almost identical. I can't remember what his last name is, but we're talking Islanders goalie, just so we don't get confused here, because I got confused while I was going through some of the stats myself. So, on the worst team amongst these 5 goalies, but they're still in the wild card. They're still in a spot in the wild card, which is something that's important here. I think if you're outside the wild card, you're normally not going to be in consideration for the Vezina, no matter how great your stats are. At least that's kind of how I look at it. Sorokin sits with the 3rd best save percentage with a 9.25, while having the 5th best goals against average. Really good numbers from this guy. Your top 5 in both of these, your top 3 in your save percentage. And this isn't because the shots he faces are easy saves, as he has the 2nd best goals saved above expected goals. We talked about that a little bit with Jack up there. He has the 2nd best in that regard. So he's seeing some tough shots that the stats are suggesting should go in, but he's still able to save it. So that is definitely something that's in well regards. You have a great save percentage, you're not allowing a whole bunch of goals, and you're doing all that while also saving a lot more shots than people would think that you're going to be able to do. He also sees his fair share of shots with the 19th most shots faced per game. Maybe not incredible, not top 10, you're not seeing an influx in shots, but still a fair share of shots there to see each game. But where he lacks is his win percentage. Now, he is on a kind of poor team, so it's not completely on him, as mentioned. It's almost more of like, oh, you're on a bad team and you're still putting up these great numbers. That kind of raises your odds in this and makes you look a little bit better. But he only has a 50 win percentage and that's not completely on him. That is still something that you kind of got to take a look at and compare, because if he's on a better team, he's definitely going to go higher in this list. But because of that win percentage, he's not able to sit at the number 1 spot in odds, at least. So he's, not brilliant, at least in the win percentage, but all of his other numbers are great. The last guy here, a guy that everyone's going to know, a guy that's been at the top of the odds the whole year, and that's going to be Linus Ullmark of the Boston Bruins. This guy's stats are crazy. He's been sitting atop the league at the odds for most of the year. He's sitting on the best team in the league by a very, very large margin. And it's not just because of the offense. It is actually in great part due to this man's play right here. His stats have been great all season. The goals against average is a 1.97, which is the best in the league, as well as a 9.35, which is the best in the league. And it's not just about being on the best team in the league, because he's putting up these great stats, but he also has the best goals or shots saved above expected. A thing that we've covered now twice with Ilya and Jack. Well, guess what? He is doing it the best out of all of these guys, so he's saving shots that everyone's expecting to go in at the highest rate in the entire league, while also having the best save percentage, while also having the best goals against average, and being on the best team here. He does receive some help in regards to shots, though, 27th in shots faced per game. So he's not seeing as many as some of these other guys here, but when he is seeing them, he's saving a lot of shots that maybe he's not even expected to do. And of course, he also has the best win percentage with a 8-1. That is a 1-1-4 lead on second place. 11%, nearly 12% lead, or I guess, I don't really know. 12%, 11%, however you look at it, lead on second place. That's a wide margin for Linus right here, and he's had an incredible year. But now that we've covered all these guys, let's talk about who I think deserves to win and who will likely win. And as much as I'd like to, rally some people up and get some people talking and throw out a curveball here and just make everyone a little bit questionable. I mean, Ilya definitely having a great year, and I think his numbers are excellent. If he had a little bit better of a win percentage, I think he could be in the conversation here. Now, Jack, very, very good numbers as well. I threw myself off there a little bit with seeing the most shots. That's on me. But, all these guys deserve to be in this conversation. But I'm not going to beat around the bush here. Linus Ullmark definitely deserves to win it. First in goals against average. First in save percentage. First in saves above expected. First in win percentage by a wide margin in that regard. It's pretty obvious that he deserves to be the winner of the Vezina. And I don't think there's any way he could lose this unless he absolutely bombs the rest of the season. And I don't think he's going to be doing that at all. All these stats, literally dominating in every statistical category for goalies, it's got to be Linus Ullmark to win the Vezina. But what do you guys think? Who should win the Vezina? Or who is a guy that's a little bit of a wild card in this race and at least deserves to be in the conversation, even if maybe they shouldn't win it? Comment all that down below. I'd love to have a conversation with you guys, and maybe there's somebody that I haven't heard enough about. But as always, if you enjoyed this video, please like. It really means a lot to me. And if you want to see more hockey content, subscribe. I have a whole lot coming to you, and when these playoffs come around, we're going to have a lot of videos talking about the NHL playoffs. So why not be here to talk about it with me? So, like I said, if you enjoyed this, like and subscribe. It would mean a whole lot to me. But as always, I hope it taught some today. Hope it made smile. Hope it means less. And really important to me, affects my day in a great way. Because every single day can be a great day if we all just put in the effort. And as always, you guys all be safe out there.